A locked case, yet the brooch was gone. The words spread fast. The glass case stood shut. No cracks, no scratches. But the brooch vanished. Hale's voice rose. "This is theft, right here, in my shop." He pointed at the counter. Flora stood behind it. Her hands shook. Ink pads, stamp sheets, slips scattered. "You stamped carelessly," Hale barked. "You left the counter unguarded." Flora gasped. I didn't. I never left." The crowd pressed closer. Murmurs. Suspicion thickened. All eyes fell on her trembling hands. One man whispered. "She looked distracted." Another hissed. "Always careless, that girl." Hale slammed his palm down. "Negligence. That's what this is." Flora's lips parted. She tried to speak. Her words broke. Silence. Her face flushed. The villagers leaned in. At the door, boots sounded, firm, rhythmic. Inspector Slack entered, cap straight, voice steady. "Step back. Let me see." The crowd shifted. Slack scanned the case. No force marks, no tool marks, glass intact. Hale waved his arms. The brooch was here, now gone, and she was distracted. Slack raised his hand. Calmly, one thing at a time. He turned to Flora. "You didn't leave the counter?" She shook her head. "No, Inspector, not once." Hale sneered. Her eyes wandered. "That's as bad as leaving." Slack frowned. He studied the stamp slips, neat rows, but one stood out. The red R. The edge nicked, faint, sharp. From the corner, Miss Marple watched, quiet, still. Her eyes fixed on the stamp, her knitting untouched. She leaned forward. She said nothing. Slack cleared his throat. "Mr. Hale, let us not condemn without proof." The jeweler huffed. "Proof? The proof is missing." The brooch was worth 30 pounds. "Who pays me back?" The villagers muttered, some against Flora, some against Hale. But the air stayed tense. Slack gestured. "We will search. We will find." His tone firm, his stance unshaken. Hale pointed toward the door. "Then start now, or you'll regret delay." Flora lowered her head. Her hands gripped the counter. Tears brimmed, but did not fall. The stamp sheets fluttered. A draft swept through. Marple's gaze didn't move. Her eyes on the Uber, her lips pressed shut, her thoughts hidden. Slack turned toward the crowd. "Disperse until I've checked." Murmurs continued. Steps shuffled, but no one fully left. Curiosity pinned them in place. The shop quieted. Only Flora's breathing, sharp, uneven. Then the telephone rang, sharp, piercing. Slack strode to the receiver. He lifted it. A voice, low. "Director." "Check the lockup." Slack froze. The words cut the air. The crowd fell silent. The call ended, the line dead. Slack lowered the receiver. Slowly, his eyes narrowed, his jaw set. The room waited. Marple's gaze flicked at Flora, then back to the inspector. Slack spoke at last. "Someone wants us to look closer." The tension held, the mystery deepened, and the case had only just begun. "Check the lockup." "Too easy, too quick." The lockup door creaked open. Slack held the key. Pike stood beside him. Hale pushed forward. The crowd pressed close. Slack stepped inside. He scanned the shelves. One satchel lay there, leather worn, handle frayed. He pulled it out. Hale gasped. "That's it, my satchel." Slack placed it on the bench. He unbuckled the strap. The flap fell open. Green light flashed. Emeralds, bright, unmistakable. The crowd roared. "Found! Caught! Thief among us!" Hale smirked. He turned to Flora. "You see? What did I say? Negligence leads to this." Flora's lips trembled. Her eyes widened. Her fingers clutched the counter. Slack frowned. He lifted one stone, turned it over. It matched Hale's description. Too precise, too neat. Pike cleared his throat. "Procedure, sir." Slack nodded. "Record it." Pike opened his notebook. He wrote date. He wrote time. 1822. He noted the bag. He logged the contents. He added location. Slack handed over the seal tape. Pike tore it clean, pressed it firm. The zigzag edge marked it. He wrote it down again. The villagers cheered. Justice. Inspector saves the day. But Slack's jaw tightened. He looked at the bag. He looked at the stones. He shook his head, slightly. Marple stood at the back, still, silent. Her hands rested on her knitting. Her eyes drifted to the church tower. The bell struck once, 6:30. Her brow furrowed. Pike had logged 1822. The bell chimed at 18:30, a small gap. 8 minutes? She made no sound. She stored it away. Her eyes lowered again. Hale clapped his hands. Well done, Inspector. Now you must arrest her. The stones prove it. Slack raised a hand. Not yet. Proof must be checked. Hale sneered. What more do you need? The jewels are here. The satchel is here. What else could explain it? The villagers muttered. True enough. Why wait? Slack kept calm. One step at a time. He gestured to Pike. Seal it again. Bring it to the station. Pike nodded. Yes, sir. He carried the satchel carefully. He pressed the seal tight. Flora shook her head. I didn't do this. Her voice cracked. No one believes me. But I didn't. Hale's eyes narrowed. Then who, girl? Who else would dare? The crowd turned. Whispers spread. Some nodded. Some frowned. Slack glanced at Flora. He said nothing, but unease showed in his stare. Marple leaned closer to Pike. Quietly, she asked. The clock? You wrote exact? Yes, madam. 1822. Her lips pressed thin. Her eyes shifted toward the tower. The bell echoed still in her mind. The villagers began to disperse. Not fully. Just enough to ease the press, but suspicion hung thick. Flora stood, frozen. Her hands shook. Her breath unsteady. She leaned slightly toward Marple, her voice barely a whisper. He said it would be simple. Flora whispers. He said it would be simple. The pictures appeared before dawn. A boy brought them first. Thin paper, smudged ink. He handed them round. At the market. Then more copies spread. By noon the village had seen them all. Inspector Slack, clear as day, holding the satchel, looking down. At the emeralds, gasps followed, then whispers, then anger. Caught with his own hands. Evidence is plain. Who guards us? If he steals. Hale stepped forward. He waved one picture high. Behold your trusted inspector. What more proof is needed? The villagers shouted. Slack stood silent, arms folded, eyes steady. He gave no answer. The colonel summoned him, office tense, photos laid on the desk. Slack stood before him, colonel's tone, heavy. You understand the damage? Yes, sir. The village has lost trust. Yes, sir. You are suspended until inquiry clears or condemns. Slack nodded once. He turned. He walked out. No protest, no plea, no anger. Marple watched from the hall. She saw his shoulders firm. She saw his jaw set. He carried silence, like armor. Later in the lane, Lake found her. Miss Marple, this is wrong. His voice sharp. Slack wouldn't. He's strict to a fault. Marple tilted her head. Appearances can mislead, but yes, I think so too. Lake lowered his voice. Hale spreads the fire. He feeds it with every word. Marple nodded. He gains from the blaze. Lake's eyes narrowed. And Flora? She avoids me now, afraid, shaken. Marple sighed. She knows more than she admits. They walked slowly. The village buzzed around them, every corner, hummed with talk. Inspector caught red-handed. Photos don't lie. Trust broken. Marple glanced toward Lake. Photos can lie. Clever hands. Make false truths. Lake stopped. You think forgery? She met his stare. Too perfect. Too fast. Too neat. Lake frowned. Then how do we prove it? Marple's eyes glinted. By watching the small things. Always the small things. Evening fell. Slack sat alone at his desk. His badge lay on the table. He did not touch it. He simply stared. Marple entered quietly. She said no word. She placed her knitting beside him. He gave a faint nod. She whispered, "Patience, Inspector. The truth hides yet." He looked at her once, his eyes then steady, then back to the badge. Silent still. Outside, villagers gathered. They spoke in low voices. Some pitied, most condemned. A man spat on the ground. A woman shook her head. One voice cut through, sharp, certain. "He'll never wear that badge again." A villager mutters, "He'll never wear that badge again." A pen. That doesn't exist. The words came from Dr. Haydock. He held the evidence label in his hand. He tilted it toward the light. He rubbed the edge gently. "This ink is ballpoint." His voice steady. "Ballpoint blue." Colonel frowned. "And?" Haydock looked up. "Inspector Slack doesn't use ballpoints. Everyone here knows it. He uses a fountain pen only. Dark ink. Always the same." Silence followed. The label looked simple, but the detail cut deep. Lake shifted. "Are you certain?" "Quite certain," Haydock said. "The flow, the blot, the line weight, all ballpoint." Slack stayed quiet. He looked at the label once. He looked away again. Hale scoffed. "Tricks, excuses. What does it matter what pen wrote the label? The jewels were in his hands." Marple leaned forward, her eyes fixed on Hale. "It matters. The label claims authenticity, but its ink betrays forgery." Hale reddened. "Nonsense. Who would bother forging a simple label?" Marple did not answer. She folded her hands again. Pike opened his notebook. "Sir, if I may, I have the log from that night. Inspector Slack signed it at 1822. I watched him write it, with his own fountain pen." He flipped the page. The ink glistened faint. Fountain pen strokes, no mistaking. Haydock nodded. "Exactly. His style, his ink, not this." The colonel rubbed his temple. "So the evidence label does not match his hand." Slack finally spoke. "That is correct." The villagers murmured again. Doubt stirred. The photo was strong, but now a flaw appeared. Lake whispered to Marple. "One inconsistency, just one. But it's enough to shift the ground." She whispered back. "One inconsistency opens the door to others." Hale slammed the desk. "You're chasing smoke. The jewels were found. The pictures are clear. You want to waste time on ink stains?" Marple's voice was calm. "Truth is not in the noise. It is in the cracks." Hale glared. His jaw tightened, but his eyes flicked away. Slack stood straighter. His silence gave weight. He did not smile. He did not thank. He simply waited. Pike closed his notebook. He spoke low. "Sir, if this is forged, then someone wanted him ruined," Lake added, "and someone knew the crowd would believe it." Marple's gaze lingered on the label. Her fingers brushed the edge. She murmured, almost to herself, "Forgery leaves fingerprints, not of flesh, but of habit." The colonel exhaled. "This changes things. We must review every piece again." Haydock set the label down. He tapped it once. "Start here. The false pen shows the first false step." Marple's eyes narrowed, her tone soft, her words deliberate. "One crack becomes a line," Marple says softly. "One crack becomes a line. Light never cheats, unless someone cheats it first." The photos lay on the table. Colonel tapped them once. "Explain these." Dr. Haydock leaned forward. He set his glass down the first picture. He studied the angle. He studied the floor line. He studied the clock. "See here," he said. "The shadow points northwest, yet the clock shows 1822. At that hour, The sun cannot cast this angle. Colonel frowned. Are you sure? Beyond doubt, Haydock replied. I checked the almanac. At that time the sun lies lower. The shadow should be longer, not short as here. He pushed the second photo forward. Now this one. Shadow angle is identical, yet the clock reads later. That cannot be. Marple tilted her head, her voice soft. Identical shadows, different hours. Curious indeed. Lake muttered. Then the photos are false. Haydock nodded. Fabricated, composed from one base image. Flora's hands twisted in her lap. She looked down. Her foot tapped against the floor. Her face pale. Hale snapped. Ridiculous. You question what all can see? The pictures show slack. Who else stands there with the satchel? Marple answered calmly. Pictures show what someone wishes us to see. Shadows show what truly was. Hale sneered. You speak riddles. Lake shot him a glare. Riddles or not, the angles don't lie. The colonel leaned back. So the time and the light disagree. Yes, Haydock said, and once the light fails, trust fails. Slack remained silent. He stared at the photo, his eyes steady, his jaw firm. Flora shifted again, her breath uneven, her fingers fumbled with her sleeve. Marple's gaze moved to her. You seem troubled, my dear. Flora shook her head quickly. Number nothing. Her voice, too fast, her tone, too thin. Lake noticed. His eyes narrowed. He whispered to Marple. She knows something. Marple replied. She knows enough. To tremble. Hale slammed his fist on the table. You waste hours. The jewels were found. The satchel was there. Stop bending words. Colonel's voice cut sharp. We will not ignore flaws. If the photos are false, then the case is false. Hale turned red. He bit his lip. But he said no more. Pike raised a hand. Sir, may I remind? My log time was true. I heard the bell. I saw the pen. Marple nodded. Yes. And now the shadows agree with you, not with the photos. The room stilled. For a moment silence spread. Doubt grew larger. Flora's hands trembled. She tried to hide them under the table. Her lips pressed tight. Then, footsteps in the hall. Lake entered again, an envelope in his hand. He placed it on the desk, his voice low, his tone heavy. There's more. Look at the clouds. Lake brings the envelope. There's more. Look at the clouds. Two skies, one shape. Lake pulled the photos from the envelope. He spread them side by side. First picture, second picture, same street, same angle, same clouds. Haydock leaned close. His finger tapped the corner. Here, the cloud bank. See the curve? That. Hook at the edge? Now look here. The later photo. Same hook, same curl. Impossible. Colonel shifted in his chair. Clouds don't freeze. Exactly, Haydock said. Clouds move, clouds change, but these stayed, 2 hours apart, same shape. Marple's eyes narrowed. Not chance, not nature. This is copied. Lake muttered. Forgery again. The villagers murmured. One voice said, Then the photos are fake? Another asked, But why fake what is true? Flora's hand shook. She pressed it flat on the table. Her lips parted. Her throat tightened. She drew in breath. She almost spoke. Hale slammed his hand down. Enough. All eyes turned. He raised his voice. Enough of this nitpicking. Clouds, ink, shadows. Nonsense. You all saw the jewels. You all saw the satchel. The evidence is perfect. He grinned. He looked at the villagers. Perfect, you hear me? Beyond dispute, beyond question. The villagers nodded. A few clapped. The murmur grew supportive again. Perfect proof. Perfect catch. Flora's voice died in her throat. She lowered her head. Her chance to speak. Gone. Slack stood at the back. He said nothing. His face remained still, but his eyes flicked once toward Flora. He noticed her silence. Lake turned to Hale. Perfect evidence, you call it, yet every piece breaks under light. Hale barked a laugh. Do you call villagers blind? They saw. They believe. No trick will shake that. Haydock shook his head. Belief does not make false true. Science speaks clear. Colonel's tone hardened. We will not ignore forged signs. This inquiry will continue. Hale waved his arm wide. Continue then. Waste time. But remember, the jewels were recovered. That is all that matters. Marple's voice cut through. Software calm, but firm. Perfection is never natural. It is arranged. Clouds repeating. Ink from the wrong pen. Shadows unmoved by time. Each too exact. Each too clean. The room stilled. No one spoke. Even Hale paused. His smile faltered. For a breath. Flora looked at Marple. Her eyes filled. But again, she said nothing. Lake crossed his arms. We follow the cracks, step by step. Colonel nodded. Proceed, no matter how loud the protest. Hale shifted his stance. He forced a smirk. But sweat lined his temple. Marple folded her hands, her voice low, her words deliberate. Perfection is the loudest lie. Marple notes softly. Perfection is the loudest lie. A seal should tear. Pike placed the satchel on the table. He pointed at the tape across the flap. The villagers leaned closer. Look here, Pike said. The edge of the tape, straight cut, smooth. That is not how regulation tape behaves. Colonel raised a brow. Explain. Pike nodded. Regulation tape is designed to tear jagged, zigzag edges. That way tampering shows at once, but this edge, clean as a knife. Someone cut it. Neat. Deliberate. Haydock leaned in. He studied the line. He tapped once. Correct. Straight cut, not torn. Slack folded his arms. He said nothing, but his eyes fixed on Hale. Hale cleared his throat. What of it? Tape is tape. Maybe an old roll, maybe an accident. Pike shook his head. No, sir. Every roll the same. I have sealed hundreds. None cut this way. Only scissors. Or a blade could do this. Lake muttered. Then the bag was opened. Marple's eyes narrowed and resealed to frame the inspector. The villagers whispered. Opened? Tampered. Then who planted the jewels? Hale's face grew red. He barked. Conspiracy. All of you invent excuses. The stones were there. The satchel was there. Why twist facts? Colonel's tone hardened. Because facts must fit. And this does not. Hale fumbled for words. He wiped his forehead. His voice cracked. Perhaps the inspector himself cut it. Perhaps he resealed it. Slack finally spoke. With what tool? In front of Pike? With the crowd watching? Pike nodded firmly. I logged the time. I logged the seal. I watched him place it. I pressed it myself. It was whole when I wrote it down. Marple's gaze stayed fixed on the bag. Her voice quiet. One false label, one false shadow, one false sky, now one false seal. The pattern grows. Lake crossed his arms. Piece by piece. Inspector Slack is cleared. Colonel nodded once. The balance shifts. Hale tried to laugh. It came weak. His hands trembled. His collar damp. The villagers noticed. They whispered again. Why is he sweating? Why does he shout so much? Slack stood taller, still silent, but vindication began to show. Not in his words, in his steady stance. Haydock tapped the bag again. This cut was made after sealing, after Pike's note. It cannot be mistake. Colonel folded his arms. Then someone entered the lockup, after the inspector left. Flora shifted in her chair. Her eyes flicked down. Her lips pressed shut. Marple watched her, watched every small tremor, but said nothing yet. Pike leaned closer to the colonel. His voice dropped. His words edged with weight. The bag was opened again. Pike whispers. The bag was opened again. Guilt leaks in silence. Flora sat alone. The shop was dark. The door locked. Her hands trembled. On the desk lay scraps, ink pads, stamps, half-finished labels. She struck a match. The flame caught. She held a slip close. The paper curled. Black edges spread. Ash fell. She burned another and another. Practice stamps, practice labels, each blackened, each gone. Her eyes watered. Smoke stung. But she did not stop. Her mind echoed with Hale's voice. "You owe me loyalty. You must protect the family. Do this for me, and no one will blame you." He had pressed the tools into her hands, stamps, ink, paper. He had shown her how to copy, how to align, how to forge. "You're clever," he told her. "Better than anyone thinks. You can do this." She had believed him at first, because she wanted to belong, because she feared his temper, because she thought it harmless. Now her stomach twisted. Now the truth pressed hard, slack suspended. The village turned, her uncle's voice still in her ears. "You'll thank me later. It will be simple." She clenched her fists. Tears stung her eyes. She whispered to herself, "I didn't want this. I never wanted this." The last slip burned. She dropped it into the tin. Ash scattered. The flame died, but the guilt remained. It sat heavy in her chest. Every breath hurt. Every sound startled her. Her mind replayed the lockup, the satchel, the bag, the seal cut, the stones placed inside. She remembered his hand guiding hers. "Quick, firm seal it. They will never know." But she knew, and Marple knew. She could feel the weight of those eyes. Her hand reached into a drawer. She pulled out a small key. Her thumb brushed the metal, the lock-up key. Her heart pounded. She thought of hiding it. She thought of throwing it into the river. She thought of keeping it close. Fear pulled one way. Truth pulled another. Her breath came sharp. Her chest rose and fell. She whispered again, "I never wanted this." Her hand shook as she slid the key back. Not into the drawer, into her pocket, close, hidden. Her eyes darted to the door. She thought she was alone. She thought no one saw. But outside, unseen, Lake waited. His eyes narrowed. He leaned closer to the window. He watched her hand move. He saw the key slip into her pocket. His jaw tightened. His suspicion confirmed. Lake, hidden, sees her slip a key into her pocket. Numbers don't mourn. They repeat. Marple sat at the desk. A ledger open. Columns of figures, dates, values, signatures. She traced a line with her finger. Jewels lost. Claim paid. Hale listed. She turned the page. Another loss. Another claim. Again. Hale named. She turned again. Same pattern. Different year. Different stone. Same result. Her lips pressed thin. The numbers told their story. No grief. No surprise. Just rhythm. Just repetition. Lake stood nearby. He leaned forward. "What do you see?" Marple answered softly. "Too much order. Too many claims. Each spaced. Each neat. Each paid." Lake frowned. "Coincidence?" She shook her head. "Coincidence does not repeat with this precision." She tapped one page. "Look here. 5 years passed. A ruby, reported missing. 3 weeks later, insurance paid." She flipped 2 more pages. "Here. 4 years passed. A necklace. Same pattern." Lake muttered. "Always Hale." "Yes," Marple said. "Always him. Always his loss. Never anyone else of note." Lake crossed his arms. "So he staged them." Marple's eyes narrowed. "He staged them, and the companies paid. Quietly, without question. He knew how to build the scene. He knew how to supply perfect proof." Lake shook his head. "Then this isn't the first time." Marple turned another page. Her finger traced down. 6 claims, 6 payouts, all his. Lake exhaled. He built a system. Marple closed one book. She pulled another from the shelf. More columns, more dates, more losses. She read in silence. Each entry echoed the last, a rhythm of fraud, a ledger of lies. Her mind measured the gaps, never random, always timed, months apart, enough to look believable, enough to keep suspicion away. Lake leaned closer. But now he pushed too far. Marple nodded. Yes, he needed a scapegoat. He used Flora's hand. He forged the rest, and he hung it all on Slack. Lake clenched his jaw. Slack nearly ruined, just to cover his trail. Marple's eyes stayed on the page, her tone even. He has used this trick for years. The only difference now, he dared involve the inspector. Lake asked, "Will the colonel accept this?" Marple shut the second book. He must. The numbers do not lie. They do not bend for pride. They show truth without intention, and the truth is plain. Lake glanced toward the door. "What will you tell Flora?" Marple paused. Nothing yet. Her silence is fragile. Break it too soon, and she may collapse. We need her steady when the time comes. Lake nodded slowly. "So the books trap Hale?" Marple placed her hand flat on the cover, her voice firm. "He built a career of fraud." Marple closes the book. "He built a career of fraud." Some steps echo louder at night. Lake waited near the canal. The lockup stood ahead. The path, narrow, his breath steady, his eyes fixed. He leaned against the wall. He listened. Silence stretched. Then, faint steps. He straightened. The sound grew. Software, careful. A pause. Then more steps. A figure appeared. Flora, her coat drawn close, her head low, her hands clutched a satchel. Lake held still. He did not move. He let her pass. He let her near the lockup. Flora fumbled at the door. She pulled a key from her pocket. Her fingers shook. She pushed it in. The lock clicked. She slipped inside. Lake followed quietly. He stayed in the dark. He watched. Flora set the satchel down. She pulled at the strap. The buckle stuck. She tugged harder. The flap opened. Tools spilled out. Scissors, glue, carbon paper, spare labels. She gasped. She scrambled to gather them, her breath sharp, her hands frantic. She muttered under her breath, "I can fix it. I can make it right. Just one more." He said it would work. Lake's jaw tightened. He stayed hidden. He let her words run. Flora pulled a slip of paper. She pressed it flat. She dipped a pen. She copied a mark. Her letters, crooked. She tore the page. She crumpled it. She threw it aside. Again she tried. Another slip. Another. Stamp. Her hand wavered. She whispered, "If I do this, they will stop. He will stop." Her voice cracked. She dropped the pen. It clattered. She froze. Her shoulders shook. She buried her face in her hands. She whispered again, "I didn't want this." Lake stepped closer, still in shadow, still unseen. His eyes caught every detail. Flora wiped her face. She bent down. She stuffed the tools back. She shoved the satchel closed. Then she reached into her pocket. She pulled out the lockup key. She held it tight. Her thumb rubbed the metal. She stared at it long, her breath uneven. Her hand shook. But she did not drop it. She slid it back inside her pocket. She turned to the door. She gripped the satchel. She whispered again, "It will be simple. He said it would be simple." She opened the door. The night air crept in. Her steps shifted back onto the path. Behind her, movement, a faint scrape. A shadow stretched. Another figure stirred. Lake froze. He stared past her. His hand tightened on the wall. Another presence. Waited. Behind her, another shadow stirs. A voice cracked. Truth poured. Flora sat on the bench. Her hands gripped the satchel. Her eyes red. Her breath uneven. Marple sat across from her, quiet, patient. Her knitting needles rested. She waited. Flora looked down. Her lips trembled. Her shoulders shook. "I can't keep it," she whispered. I can't hide it anymore. Marple leaned slightly forward. Say it, child. Flora's voice broke. I forged them, the labels, the stamps, all of it. She covered her face. Her sobs escaped. Her body trembled. Marple's tone stayed calm. Why, Flora? Why risk everything? Flora shook her head. Tears spilled. Her words came in fragments. Hale said it would protect Uncle. He said if I did it, no one would question. He promised it was simple, that no one would be hurt. Marple pressed gently. And you believed him? Flora's eyes lifted. They glistened with fear. I had to. He said the family would fall without it. He said I was clever enough to save us. He made me think it was duty. Marple's voice softened. He used you. He placed his guilt on your shoulders. Flora's sobs grew heavier. She clutched the satchel tighter. Her words spilled again. He made me sign everything, every slip, every mark. He told me what to write. He told me how to press the stamps. He said no one would ever know. She buried her face again. I didn't want to. I swear I didn't. But he stood over me. He wouldn't let me stop. He said I owed him. He said I was weak if I refused. Marple's gaze stayed steady. You were not weak. You were frightened. That is different. Flora shook her head. I destroyed the practice slips, but the real ones, they remain. They will find them. They will know. Marple's voice dropped. Then tell it all. Speak it now. The truth is the only path left. Flora lifted her head, her cheeks wet. Her lips parted, her voice strained. He planned everything, the satchel, the tape, the jewels. My part was small, but it trapped him. He laughed when I finished. He said no one would ever believe I hadn't done it freely. Marple placed her hand on the table. Close, steady. You are not alone now. Flora gasped for air. Her chest heaved. Her words tumbled out. He made me sign everything. The room fell still. Her confession hung heavy. Then a step echoed. Lake moved from the shadows. He stood tall, his face hard, his eyes sharp. He pointed toward her pocket. His voice cut the air. Not everything. We caught you. Lake steps forward. Not everything. We caught you. Confidence finally cracked. Hale stood at the table, his chin high, his voice loud. All lies, all tricks. You want to frame me now. The girl admitted it. She confessed. She signed. She forged. Not me. Flora shook her head, her eyes swollen, her words faint. You told me to. You made me. Hale snapped back. Rubbish. She blames me because she is weak. Colonel raised his hand. Enough. We will hear evidence in order. Haydock stepped forward. He placed the bag seal on the desk. First, the tape. Straight cut. Not regulation. Someone cut it. It was opened again. He slid the label forward. Second, ink analysis. Ballpoint pen. Inspector Slack uses fountain only. This label. Forged. He placed the photographs down. Third, the shadows. Angles wrong. Times wrong. Fake composites. And identical clouds. Impossible in nature. Finally, Marple laid the ledger. Fourth, the numbers. Claims repeated. Always Hale. Always his payout. Year after year. Fraud concealed as loss. The table filled. Each piece laid bare. Each piece pointing the same way. Hale's face tightened. His voice shook. Coincidences, nothing more. A smear job, nothing proven. Marple's tone was calm. Coincidence does not arrange clouds. Coincidence does not cut tape. Coincidence does not copy shadows. Lake leaned forward. And coincidence does not pay the same man. 6 times running. Hale turned red. He slammed his hand on the desk. I am the victim. My property stolen. My trust betrayed. Flora's voice cut through. You told me I owed you. You put the tools in my hand. You laughed when I obeyed. Hale glared at her. Lies! She wants to drag me down with her. Marple opened the ledger. Her finger tapped the pages. Here, the ruby, claimed 5 years ago. Payout recorded. Hale's signature. She flipped. Here, the necklace, 4 years ago. Same pattern. Payout again. She flipped once more. Here, the brooch, last year. Same story. And now this. Always the same man. Always the same gain. Hale's mouth opened. No sound came. His eyes darted to the villagers. But their faces shifted. Doubt spread. Colonel's tone grew sharp. The evidence piles against you, Hale, and the confession seals it. You built fraud on fraud. You used Flora. You tried to break the inspector. Hale shouted, desperate. She forged the labels. She opened the lockup. I am innocent. Marple's voice cut steady. She forged under your command. You profited every time. You are no victim. You are the hand behind it all. The silence that followed was heavy. Every eye fixed on Hale. His shoulders slumped. His breath shallow. His confidence cracked. Colonel's hand struck the desk. The sound thundered. His voice cold. Arrest him. Colonel bangs the desk. Arrest him. A badge weighs heavier when nearly lost. The colonel sat stiff. The papers lay signed before him. He looked up at Slack, his tone firm. Your suspension is lifted. Your record stands clear. You are reinstated. Slack nodded once. No smile. No relief shone. His jaw tight. The villagers shifted. Some coughed. Some lowered their eyes. Whispers passed through the room. We judged too soon. Perhaps we were wrong. He bore it in silence. Hale's name was spat in corners. Fraud. Thief. Manipulator. One man muttered near the back. Slack kept quiet, even when all of us doubted him. Another whispered, and we jeered. Shame on us. The colonel cleared his throat. Inspector, the inquiry is closed. The false evidence exposed. The fraudster unmasked. You return to your duty. Slack straightened. He saluted once. He lowered his arm, still silent. Pike grinned faintly. He stepped forward. Procedure saved you, sir. The log, the seal. Without it, they might have won. Slack glanced at him. He gave a short nod. Nothing more. Lake folded his arms. Truth caught up in the end, but it came close. Marple spoke softly. Closer than most will admit. The villagers drew nearer. Some spoke in low voices. We owe him apology. We doubted his name. He carried it without complaint. Slack's face remained set, his eyes distant. He said no word. One villager tried to step forward. Inspector, we are sorry. Slack turned his head. He looked once, then turned away. The words stayed locked. Marple watched him closely. She saw the weight he carried. She saw it had not lifted. The badge was returned. But the scar remained. Pike leaned to Lake. He won't forget, Lake answered. Nor forgive, not easily. The colonel spoke again. You may resume your post at once. The station awaits you. Slack bowed his head slightly. Yes, sir. He reached for his badge. He pinned it back. The metal glinted. His hand lingered on it. Heavy now. Marple's eyes softened. She said quietly, It feels different, after such trial. Slack looked at her. His lips pressed thin. He held her gaze, then turned back, to the table. The villagers shifted once more. Some left, some lingered. The room thinned. Pike broke the silence. Procedure saved you. He repeated it with a smile. Never doubt the log, sir. Slack gave no answer. His jaw clenched tighter. He stepped toward Marple. He spoke low, so only she could hear. But what if she hadn't spoken? Slack asked Marple quietly. But what if she hadn't spoken? Innocence bent can still break. Flora sat before the colonel, her hands folded, her eyes lowered, her shoulders drawn tight. The colonel's voice carried weight. You face charges, forgery, tampering, assistance in fraud. Flora's lips trembled. I didn't mean harm. I was told. I was pressed. I had no choice. Hale's shadow lingered in every word, the memory of his commands, the weight of his pressure, the grip of his threats. Marple stepped forward, her tone calm. She was used, not by will, by fear, by duty forced upon her. The colonel looked doubtful. The law is not gentle. Forgery cannot pass unseen. Marple held her gaze steady. True. But law sees cause. She gained nothing. He gained all. She obeyed. He commanded. That is the difference. Lake spoke from the side. She confessed. She tried to burn the slips. That shows guilt, yes, but it also shows conscience. Pike added softly. She broke under pressure. She is not hardened. She is young, misled. The colonel rubbed his brow. You ask mercy, yet the village saw her part. Marple's voice sharpened. They saw what was arranged. They did not see the hand forcing hers. Punish her fully. And you punished the wrong one twice. Silence fell. Flora's breath shallow, her eyes glassed. The colonel sighed. Very well. Reduced charge. Not cleared, but lessened. Assistance, not architect. She will not walk free, but she will not bear his weight entire. Flora gasped faintly. Her hands covered her mouth. Relief and dread mingled. Tears fell down her cheeks. Marple placed a hand on her shoulder. You will face it, but you will live, and that matters. Flora sobbed. Her words stumbled. I wanted to stop. I wanted to tell, but he said I was nothing without him, that no one would listen, that I had to obey. Marple's tone softened again. Now you see, his voice does not rule you. Not anymore. Lake nodded. She will stand, but not alone this time. Pike closed his notebook. Truth carried her here. That should weigh as much as guilt. The colonel leaned back. So be it. The record will show her part reduced. The fraud pinned where it belongs. She will answer, but not as his equal. Flora's hands shook. She whispered, Thank you. Her head lowered again. Her shoulders slumped. The room emptied slowly. The decision settled heavy. Not full punishment. Not full freedom. Flora sat still. Her lips moved faint. Her voice barely sound. I wish I had. Burned it all. Flora whispers. I wish I had burned it all. The village always remembers. The hall was full. Voices low. Faces turned forward. Hale stood at the center. His shoulders slumped. His eyes darted. The ledger lay on the table. The photos spread beside it. The label and tape stacked near. The colonel's voice carried. Evidence proves fraud. The claims, the fabrications, the forgeries. You profited from lies. You built them carefully, but lies fall. Hale tried to speak. No. The colonel cut him. Enough. You used Flora. You framed Slack. You stained the badge of this county. The villagers murmured. Fraud. Cheat. Disgrace. Hale's face turned pale. His hands shook. He lowered his head. He said no more. Lake stepped forward. He placed the sealed bag before the colonel. Recovered. Proven false. No longer binding. The colonel nodded. Fraud unmasked. Inspector Slack restored. The law holds. The crowd whispered louder. Eyes turned to Slack. Some filled with shame. Some filled with pity. Some with respect. He bore it quiet. He never shouted back. He waited until truth came. Slack stood still, his jaw tight, his arms behind his back. He gave no sign of pride. Pike smiled faintly. He muttered, Justice done, at last. Marple sat at the side. Her needles clicked slow. She said nothing. Her gaze stayed soft. She watched all. The villagers shifted. Their gossip turned, not against Slack now, but toward regret. We doubted him. We joined the whispers. Yet he stood firm, one woman said. He is harder than we thought. He carried it alone. Another man added, And she? He nodded toward Marple. She saw through it first. Lake leaned against the wall. He whispered to Pike. The crowd bends quick. Yesterday they jeered. Today they praise. Pike shrugged. That's a village, memory sharp, but tongue sharper. The colonel closed the book. The matter ends here. Records will show truth. Fraud by Hale, forgery by Flora, innocence of Inspector Slack, justice served. Guards led Hale away. He stumbled once. No one reached to help him. The crowd watched in silence. Slack remained still. He touched his badge once. He looked straight ahead. The whispers grew softer. Pity replaced anger. Shame replaced doubt. He deserved better. We wronged him. He kept his duty, even when we broke faith. Marple's needles paused. Her eyes lifted. She looked at Slack. He did not move. Then, slowly, he turned. His eyes met hers. His lips parted. His voice low. A question carried only to her. Why did you believe in me? Slack glances at her. Why did you believe in me? Truth hides in the smallest tear. Marple sat by the window. The ledger closed. The knitting folded. The case ended. Yet her mind traced each step. One crack in the label. One shadow out of place. One cloud repeated. One tape cut straight. Each flaw small. Each flaw ignored by most. But together, they exposed a chain of fraud, years long. She thought of Flora, a girl pressed into guilt, a hand guided by fear, a conscience that broke at last. Flora left quietly, no crowd, no farewell. A carriage took her away, the punishment reduced, the shame heavy. Slack stood outside the station, his badge pinned back, his face set firm. Marple joined him. She waited. He spoke first. My duty stands, but trust does not. They doubted me. They turned against me. I carried silence, while they whispered guilt. Marple answered, You carried it with dignity. He shook his head. Dignity is thin when faith is lost. Next time I will watch sharper. No piece of evidence will pass me untested, no seal unchecked, no label unexamined. Marple studied him. You will be stricter, yes, but do not lose patience. It is patience that uncovered this. Slack nodded once. I will not forget. The badge feels heavier now, but I will carry it. Lake stepped from the doorway. He said, The village will talk for years. But they know now. They know he stood firm. Slack gave no reply. His eyes stayed forward. Marple turned her thoughts again. Fraud never shines in jewels. It shines in motive. Greed builds its steps carefully. It bends others to its will. It hides behind perfect lies. Hale had believed perfection his shield. Every claim neat. Every photo flawless. Every trick too clean. But perfection betrayed him, because perfection never lives in truth. Flora had believed loyalty was duty. She thought obedience would save her. She thought silence would keep peace. But silence broke her faster than guilt. Slack had believed his work spoke for him. Yet the crowd doubted. Even friends wavered. Even his badge could not shield him. But still he stood. Still he endured. Marple closed her eyes a moment. Human weakness repeated itself. Fear, greed, pride, old stories, told again. Only the details shifted. She opened them again. The hall now empty. The case now closed. But the lesson stayed. Pike approached softly. Miss Marple, do you rest now? She gave a faint smile. Rest comes after reflection, and reflection, always after fraud. He tilted his head. Do you think it will happen again? She answered. Always. So long as greed breathes, fraud follows. And so long as weakness bends, someone will press it. Her voice lowered, her words final. In murder or fraud, color lies not in ink or sky. It lies in motive.